Okay, how's everybody doing this evening? My name is Kent, and I think this is going to be my last Cornhusker video. I'm going back to cryptocurrency. It's much more predictable than Husker football. So anyway, I'd like to make this video probably as a departing video for Husker videos. For me anyway, I'm not going to make any more after this. And I was getting ready to make a final video about Matt Ruhle. So I was getting ready, and I didn't want to make this video until I found out if Ruhle was going to keep Micky Joseph, because of course, if you've watched my previous two videos, I grew up in western Nebraska. I've been watching the Cornhuskers for a long time. Live in California now, but still follow the team. And kind of, like everybody else, just realized it really went downhill and found it kind of interesting how bad it has gotten, and if they were ever going to get it fixed or not. So I saw Micky Joseph come aboard. Of course, I remember Micky in his playing days, watched him in a couple games at Memorial Stadium. I always liked his personality, thought he was kind of funny, looked like he kind of meshed well with the football players. And of course, he's a great recruiter. So I was of the feeling that Micky would be hopefully named the head coach. Made a video about it, got 3,000 views. Was hoping to get more interest in Micky, getting people, and then everybody kind of agreed that Micky was, a really good choice. But I think the last time I saw him on one of his videos or one of the live streams they had, or he kind of was you could kind of tell he knew that he wasn't going to be the head coach. So at that point, because he was talking about, hey, I'll be fine. I've got a good resume. I'll find a job. I'll take care of myself. Don't worry about it. If I'm chosen, great. If I'm not, I'm not. But he kind of put the air out that he wasn't going to be chosen. So at that point, then I made a video saying, hey, there's other people out there, but I certainly didn't like Matt Ruhle. In fact, I even said I didn't like Matt Ruhle. So in the last couple of days, I've been kind of watching my phone, watching for news about Husker football, and of course Micky Joseph. And of course, yesterday I'm on my phone trying to find out if he's going to be retained or not, and all of a sudden I see he's in jail. And I can't believe it. Like, I suppose no one else can believe it either. If there ever was, there's an old saying from the outhouse, or from the penthouse to the outhouse, if there ever was a person that actually made that happen, it's Micky Joseph. If this is true, which I think he's going to deny that any of it's true, because I heard a little bit. He was in front of a judge for a bond hearing, and he kind of indicated that from what his lawyer said, or from some place I read on the comments, that he didn't do any of this, that this wasn't anything that he did, which is going to be, probably his position. Hey, I didn't do anything that she said I did, which is now it's he said, she said. But if there ever was a position where you don't want to do anything like this, domestic violence, any kind of drug use, any kind of alcohol and driving, any kind of those things, because you're entrusted with taking care of young men, boys actually that are going to be young men and are in school to learn how to act. And of course, if you're setting a bad example by doing stuff you shouldn't be doing, you sure as heck don't want that person as a coach. And the other thing too, you don't want that person as a coach of a big program, one with lots of money, as Nebraska seems to have. So if this is the case, if Micky, is implicated in any way or admits to what he's done, which I feel there probably is something here, even though I don't like to think that way. But yeah, he probably did do something. God, let his temper get the better of him, and he probably did do something. If that's the case, then he's probably going to be poisoned for a long time, and he may not be involved at all with the coaching at Nebraska. In fact, I think it's really being set up that way. In fact, the first time I saw this news, I thought, wow, what a convenience for Trev Alberts. He doesn't pick Micky Joseph. A lot of people that follow Nebraska wanted Micky Joseph, and now it looks like he kind of like, wow, what a stroke of luck for Trev Alberts. He doesn't pick Micky, and then all of a sudden Micky gets in trouble for beating his wife. So it's like it was like something that he was, it's almost like Micky was set up. It's like now Trev looks like, wow, he was smart not to take Micky when everybody thought Micky was a good choice. Which I have never trusted Trev Alberts. I don't trust Trev Alberts, and I'll tell you why I don't trust Trev Alberts. because he says a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense. One of the things he said is that, wow, we had a really tough negotiation process with Matt Ruhle. Really, really tough. I mean, we paid the guy $74 million over 10 years, and that was a hard negotiation. I mean, I don't think there's anything hard about giving someone $74 million over 10 years and then calling it a tough negotiation. And then the other thing I don't trust about Trev Alberts is when he says stuff like, well, you know, the Carolina Panthers, we had a hard time dealing with them at the end. Well, that was really tough. So let me get this straight. Carolina owes Matt Ruhle $40 million. You know, if he does something or not, but if he does do something, it's kind of offset by whatever he does. So really, Nebraska bailed out Carolina. You owe him $40 million. Nebraska pays him $70 million, $74 million, who knows, a bunch of millions and millions of dollars. So now you got Carolina out from underneath their obligation, but you had a tough negotiation with them? That doesn't sound right. That just doesn't sound right. So, you know, there's a lot of things I don't trust about Trev Alberts. Yeah, and the other thing about the whole Scott Frost thing. I mean, you wait a few more weeks and Scott Frost gets a $7.5 million less. Maybe it's, I can't remember the exact figure, but it's a bunch of money. And we just, well, we're going to get rid of Scott. So, wow, that made a big difference in our season. So we, you know, right at the point, right before we play Oklahoma, Scott Frost is fired. You could have saved $7.5 million if you just would have waited a couple more weeks, but you go ahead and fire him. So that doesn't make any sense to me either. The other thing, and this is very peculiar, I don't know, you know, everybody has a different ways of looking at things. I noticed when they went to Dublin, Ireland, and Trev was walking across the street with his wife, and he had his hand out and she was following him. And it's kind of like he's pulling her by the hand, like, come on, come on, come on. And it's almost like he's doing it for appearances. Like he's got to hold hands with his wife crossing the street for appearances, not because she wants to hold his hand or he wants to hold her hand, but it's kind of like he's doing it for the camera. And I mean, that kind of looked a little phony to me too. So it's just a lot of little things about Trev. Plus it's just the appearance, you know, the real slick appearance, you know, always the nice suit. He's always says the right things, and he's always like, you know, he kind of is a little too slick, a little too cool, kind of has it all figured out ahead of time. And plus, when you're dealing with the kind of money they're dealing with, man, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. This is crazy money they're dealing with. I mean, Matt Ruhle to get almost $100 million, $74 million, I believe. And the guy's never really won a major college football game. I think they beat Navy, or did they lose to Navy? I can't remember. I think Navy's the best team he's ever beat. I mean, you may say, hey, he hasn't beat many good teams, but then again, you know, you got to consider where he's coming from. He's coming from Temple and Baylor. Well, that's a problem too. I mean, you're not coming from great schools and you're not beating great schools. So how do we know how good he is? And I have a feeling that he's just probably going to be an average coach. That's kind of where I probably see him as an average coach. But you're paying a guy like $74 million over 10 years to be an average coach. But he's saying all the right things. And of course, when you're making $74 million, it's pretty easy to say the right things. I mean, anybody can be coached up to say the right things when they're making that kind of money. So, but it's a disappointment. I didn't think they should hire Matt Ruhle. But then again, you know, who do you hire? I don't know. I mean, you look at like Alabama, they hired Nick Saban, but Nick Saban had won a national championship at LSU. So he'd been there, he'd done it, he'd won a national championship. He was in the pros too. He wasn't really successful in the pros, but he was successful in college. You know, there's other, Urban Meyer, he's won national championships. But then you get a guy like Matt Ruhle who hasn't really won anything and hasn't really, you know, performed at a very high level, even though he's taken programs. And who knows about these programs that he took over, Baylor and Temple. I mean, I don't know if the guy before him did a great job of recruiting and he was just using somebody else's players. He wasn't really there long enough to know. He didn't really have enough of a track record. So you got a guy that really hasn't won any major, he hasn't done anything major. Kind of reminds me of Riley, when Riley came in. I remember everybody said, well, you know, he hasn't really done anything too much, but, you know, he was at Oregon State. We get into Nebraska with a bunch of resources and funding and tools and blah, blah. He's going to really take off. Well, they're saying the same thing about Matt Ruhle. You know, Matt Ruhle, yeah, he was at, you know, programs like Temple and Baylor when things weren't that great for him. But we get him to Nebraska, and boy, he's really going to have, you know, it's going to be his time to shine. So I don't know. It just doesn't seem right. I mean, you know, Trev Alberts, just like, this is our man. This is who we picked. This is the guy that we've got to lead the program. Invest like $100 million in this guy. You know, give Scott Frost another $7.5 million. And now they expect this guy to turn around and do something great. But then again, I was thinking today that in the college field, And I see where Malachi Coleman is decommitted. Probably be a bunch of others. The only person I'm really hoping that they don't lose is Casey Thompson. I mean, I really think Casey Thompson does a good job, and I think to lose Casey Thompson would be a real tragedy because he's just really starting to hit his stride with Nebraska, especially if they can get him some help on the offensive lineman. They don't need skilled players. They need offensive linemen. They need defensive linemen. They need some line play. That's what they need. And everybody says it. Everybody knows. Of course, Ruhle's been talking about that too. So Matt Ruhle, that's his name? Can't even remember his name. Ruhle is the coach of Nebraska now. So how he does, I have no idea. My expectations aren't that high, simply because his track record isn't that great. And this guy, for everything he's done, is making almost $100 million, $75 million, $74 million over the next 10 years. That is incredible. It just doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense. It's just, those numbers are off the charts. I remember listening to Barry Switzer one time, and he said that during the 70s, when he was winning national championships at Oklahoma, he was making like $100,000 a year. So these coaches in the 70s that were very successful, Switzer was one of the most successful. There you go. Maybe we could have hired Barry Switzer. He's still around. But, he makes $100,000 a year in Oklahoma, having, undefeated seasons. And now we got guys making $75 million, $74 million. And its numbers are just off the charts. It's just incredible. That's why you can't trust the process. You can't trust the system. You can't trust the people that are doing it. That's why when Trev says, we've had trouble with this negotiation. How in the world do you have trouble with a negotiation when you're throwing around $74 million? I mean, give me that much money. I can negotiate about a deal with anybody with $74 million. I mean, that's not a trick. But it's like he had to work so hard at this. We had to work so hard at getting Matt Ruhle in, and we had problems with Carolina. We bought them out of their problem, but then again, they were difficult to deal with. I don't believe any of that. That's all BS. And that's why I don't trust Trev Alberts. That's why I don't trust Matt Ruhle, and that's why I don't trust this whole process. That's why I don't trust Nebraska football, and that's why I'm probably not going to make any more videos on it anymore. But then again, you take a guy like Matt Ruhle. He probably is a 3-star recruiter. And he may be a guy that can build people up. I mean, certainly the coaches they've had around lately at Nebraska have not been very good at developing players. Every player they had didn't seem like they got any better. Although, I got to say, the defense looked like they got a lot better. I think Billy Bush, that was a kind of a tough deal for him to leave. I would have liked to see Bush stick around. He seemed like he was doing a lot better with the defense. So yeah, I think Bush is gone. Micky Joseph will probably be gone. A bunch of their recruits that they recruited probably will be gone. So yeah, he's going to have to start with a fresh slate. But you get a guy like Malachi Coleman in, who is, I don't know, 4-star, close to 5-star recruit. And if these guys do really, really good, what do? They just do like Trey Palmer does. They just take off and go to the NFL. So you don't keep them around anyway. So if you're a great recruiter and you recruit these guys that are really superstars, they last maybe a year or two. So really, the best way to probably do this is the way Matt Ruhle's talking about doing it. Just take players that are 3-star, build them up, get them so they understand the system, get them so that they're prepared to play for 3 or 4 or 5 years for you. And then, then hopefully get them into the NFL. But, don't make it so that they come to college already full of themselves, so they have a lot of feelings that they're worth more than the NIL money's going to give them. And, they're going to go off to the NFL like Trey Palmer, and, who knows how Trey Palmer will do. I hope he does well. I hope he goes to the NFL and makes a lot of money. I hope he's a high-round draft pick. But he could just very easily fall into the lower rounds. He could very easily get on a practice squad. He could very easily be making less money than he would have made at NIL. So who knows? So we'll see. I mean, like I say, I'll be watching. Doubt if I make any more videos unless something really strikes me. But I'll be watching. The other thing I was going to talk about is that I feel bad for a kid like Casey Thompson, because he is a good kid. It seems like he'd make a great coach. But you can see how he's so torn. I mean, he's got the skill to be good at Nebraska, but everybody's saying, well, he doesn't quite have, the talent, or, he's not tall enough. He's probably not a little fast enough to be a quarterback in the NFL. Doesn't throw a deep enough ball, but he's been hurt, so who knows? So he's just not quite the NFL caliber, but that's got to be where his mind's at. I want to go to the NFL. But then again, sticking around Nebraska for one more year. Probably doesn't seem like the best fit for him either. You know, he probably doesn't want to stick around in Nebraska, especially if they can't get their line fixed. So I can see where a kid like that's really in dilemma. I mean, tear up your body at Nebraska because you got an awful offensive line, or you know, take a stab at the pros, and you can wash out really easy. I mean, you see these guys go to the pros, they maybe get a couple years, or get pushed around on practice squads, and then they're out, then they're done, and then you got to hope that you can find something else, or get maybe get a coaching job. Right now, these guys in coaching, that seems like the place to go. I mean, if you can't make it in the NFL, just try to get on one of these coaching staffs and see if you can't make a big bunch of money, because these guys making $100 million for coaching right now is ridiculous. There's not a coach in the world worth $100 million or $74 million, and especially one like Matt Ruhle, who hasn't really won anything. The guy hasn't won anything at all, not a national championship, not a Super Bowl. I don't even know if he's won a conference championship, and I don't even know if he's really, I think one time I saw a stat on him, he's like 2-11 against ranked teams. So the guy's like won 2 games against a ranked team. I mean, this is like crazy. And the guy's like the Nebraska head coach, and he's making $74 million. And Trev's telling us how hard it was to get him. Oh boy, we really had to struggle to get him. So anyway, we'll be watching. I appreciate you watching. Thank you.